After you've made a piece, it's important for it to become partially dry, and after it's partially dry, it can be trimmed. I like to let my pieces dry for a while this way, and then I cut them off the bat and I turn them upside down so that they dry equally at the top and the bottom. And after they're partially dry, we call that leather hard. They are trimmed. To trim a piece, you need some tools. You need some balls of clay. You need a straight edge or ruler, pencil, your wooden tool again, and I have here 2 trimming tools. Now, trimming tools come in a variety of sizes and shapes. The important thing with the trimming tool is that they have a sharp edge rather than having just a round wire on the edge. If I could only have 2, these are the 2 shapes that I would want. And then it's also handy to continue to have your needle tool. I tell my students that the best artist is the artist who knows the most tricks. And the first thing we need to do is to figure out how thick this is so that we know how much to cut off. With a little bit of practice, you can just tell by feeling on the sides, but it's really difficult to know how much clay is in the bottom. I've seen ceramic artists tapping on the bottom, and I don't think that tells you very much. Depending on how wide this is, how thick it is, and how damp it is, you're going to get altogether different sounds. And so unless you make everything the same every time, that's not going to do much good. What I like to do is I'll take my straight edge and I lay it across the top, and I take my wooden tool and I can set this in here and I make a mark and make a second mark. And the distance between the 2 marks is the exact thickness of the bottom. There's absolutely no guesswork with that. So I take this here, move it out here, and this is the true thickness of the bottom. You can do the same thing by poking it with your needle tool, but that's not always convenient to do, and it always leaves a hole which you have to fill up again. Then I need to center this on my potter's wheel. And there are several ways to do that, but the most efficient way, I think, is simply to turn the wheel on, taking my pencil, holding it still, and for the first time in your life, you can draw a perfect circle. I draw several, and we're going to center our piece on this wear board. You can do this directly on the metal wheel head below, but you need to take off the bat pins. It does have some circles already on it. Sometimes they're not in the right place, and you need to add some others with your pencil because it's handy to have them as close to the piece of pottery as you can get. Then we're going to set this on here, and then you need to adjust this so that it is the same distance from the line on opposite sides. The next step is to attach the piece down with these balls of clay. To do that, hold the piece with your hand so that when you press this down and you press directly into the bat, don't press into the piece, because if you do that, you might crush the sides. But you hold this down so that you don't skid the piece at all. And we'll press this down. So now we have our piece attached. It's centered. It is attached. We know exactly how thick the bottom is, and we have a pretty good idea how thick the sides are. Then using either one of my trimming tools, I'm going to carve away the excess clay that's out here. To do that, I take my left hand and I lay it over the surface and just let it glide. And then I'm going to brace this tool. I'll hold it like a pencil, and I'm going to brace it against my thumb. I'm not going to hold it like this, out here free. It's going to be braced against his thumb. That's because if the pot wiggles at all, the thumb follows the shape of the piece, and we don't worry about trimming a hole in the side of it. brace the tool against your thumb and trim on it. I like to leave at least a ½ inch in the bottom of a bowl, sometimes as much as an inch, because I think it looks nice to have a nice foot for it to sit on. I like to have the foot shape make sort of an S shape, so it's a nice smooth transition from the bowl to the foot rim, so it has a nice glide to it. Ordinarily, I think the foot ought to be about 2/5 the size of the bowl rim. Now that depends a little bit what you're going to use this bowl for. If you're going to set it on a table, that's fine. If you're going to make a casserole dish and put it in the oven where you don't want it to tip around, you may want to have it a little bit wider. I then brace this tool on my thumb and I move it over from the edge however far that I want it to be, generally about 3/8 of an inch. And I'll carve down here and take some more clay away. The reason I do that is that I can visually tell how much clay I have left and how much I've removed. When I think I've taken enough away, I can mentally subtract the distance from this button to the clay wall, and I can look at the marks that I've made on my wooden tool, and I can determine how much is left in the bottom. So I don't have to worry about carving a hole in the bottom. It's a common mistake when people are getting started to make a hole and leave it in the bottom of their piece. After I've removed enough clay, then I can take it out and smooth it up. Now, sometimes I'll use both tools. In this case, the clay is just a little bit on the damp side, and to make it smoother, I want a little wider surface, and I can smooth it out by using a little bigger tool here. I'm using my wooden stick, I come back, and I smooth this out on the bottom. I always think about my great aunt Gertie and her round oak antique table, and how when you make a piece of pottery, you don't want to give that to her and have her set it on that round oak table and drag it across and mar the surface of that finish. And you can make sure that that doesn't happen to you if you take a wooden stick and burnish the bottom. Make it nice and smooth. I can then use this same stick and I can burnish the sides and smooth it out and make sure that any marks that I don't want there have been removed. After I've completely done this, and I think that I'm done, remember I'm only thinking that I'm finished, I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to make a mark in the ball of clay and a mark on the side of the piece. And I'm going to take the clay away from the other sides and slide this out. I can check it and see if I have enough clay removed. I can take this needle tool and I can poke in here again, and I can say how thick do I want this at the bottom. If I have extra clay that I don't want there, I can now return it exactly the same as it was before, and I can carve some more clay off. I can just remove some more. If I don't make this mark, what's likely to happen is I'll take this clay, and particularly if my pot is not perfectly round in the first place, and I put it back on here. Now I'm going to fake this just a little bit, but you could end up with something that looks like this if you don't put that mark on there. And that's really hard to return and to trim any more clay off of. So that's why that mark is really important. After I'm done, I can take my finger and I can smooth this out, put my name on the bottom, and this is ready to dry out and go to the next step, which would be bisque firing.